You know that feeling when a key slides into a lock for the very first time. Your key for your lock, for your door. There's nothing like it. For me, that door was the left side of a charming little duplex on Maple Street. It was my official entry into adulthood. My first real place after years of roommates and crappy apartments. It had a little porch, a patch of grass I was ridiculously excited to mow, and a shared wall. I had no idea at the time, but that shared wall would become the boundary between my life and a nightmare. His name was Michael. He lived in the other half of the duplex, 1B. I met him on moving day. I was wrestling a heavy box labeled Kitchen Very Fragile up the steps when he appeared in his doorway, looking like he'd just walked out of a J. Crew catalog. He was handsome in that effortless, classic way dark hair, a kind smile, and eyes that actually crinkled when he smiled. "Looks like you could use a hand with that," he said, his voice warm and friendly. He introduced himself, and within minutes was helping my dad and me with the heaviest furniture, never once breaking a sweat or complaining. He told me he was a software engineer who worked from home. He also mentioned he was a single dad. Right on cue, a little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, peeked out from behind his legs. She had big, watchful brown eyes and a cascade of dark curls. "This is my daughter, Lily," he said, gently nudging her forward. "Lily, say hi to our new neighbor, Clara." Lily didn't say hi. She just stared at me, her expression unreadable, clutching the hem of her father's shirt. "She's a bit shy," Michael said with an indulgent laugh. "We've had the whole duplex to ourselves for a while. She'll warm up to you." In those first few weeks, I was convinced I had won the neighbor lottery. Michael was perfect. He was quiet, respectful, and always had a friendly wave. We fell into an easy rhythm. We'd bring in each other's trash cans, chat over the low fence that separated our small backyards. I developed a crush, of course, a big, messy, undeniable crush. He was the total package, and I found myself daydreaming about a future that involved more than just borrowing a cup of sugar. But as the weeks turned into a month, I started to notice things. Small things at first. Lily, for instance. She never seemed to warm up. She was a ghost of a child, silent and solemn. I'd see her in their yard, sitting perfectly still on the swing set, not swinging, just sitting, her big eyes fixed on her own house. Whenever Michael was around, she was a model of perfect obedience. But once, I glanced out my kitchen window and saw her in their yard alone. Her face was tight with an adult-like anxiety, her little hands twisting the fabric of her dress. The moment she saw me watching, her expression went blank, like a mask dropping into place. It was unnerving. Then there was the routine, Michael's nightly routine. It was precise, unvarying, and deeply strange. Every single night, at exactly 9 p.m., I'd hear the faint scrape of his blinds being drawn. Every single one in the exact same order. Living room, kitchen, his office. Then came the clicks of the locks. Front door, back door, the small chain lock. It was like a ritual. And then, at 9:15, the music would start. It was a music box. A tinny, delicate melody that played for exactly 15 minutes. I could hear it faintly through the shared wall of our living rooms. It was a sweet, simple tune, but hearing it every night, at the exact same time, began to feel less charming and more obsessive. One night, I was up late working and heard him through the wall. He was humming along to it, but under his breath, he was whispering. I couldn't make out the words, just a soft, rhythmic murmur, like a prayer or an incantation, until the music stopped. And then, silence. I tried to rationalize it. He's a single dad. Kids need structure, routine. Maybe the music box was for Lily to help her sleep, but it didn't feel like that. It felt rigid, fragile, like if one step was missed, something terrible would happen. The first real crack in Michael's perfect facade appeared on a Saturday afternoon. I was weeding my small flower bed when Lily approached the fence. It was the first time she had ever come near me on her own. She didn't say anything, just stood there watching me. "Hi, Lily," I said gently. "I'm just pulling out the naughty weeds." She held up a piece of paper. It was a drawing, done in crayon. It was a picture of our duplex. On my side, 1A, was a smiling stick figure with blonde hair, clearly meant to be me. On her side, 1B, there was a tall stick figure of her dad, and a small one of her. But there was a fourth figure, a woman inside the house, looking out of the upstairs bedroom window. She had long brown hair, and her eyes were drawn as two big black X's. A cold shiver went down my spine. "That's a very nice drawing," I said, my voice a little shaky. "Who's the woman in the window?" Lily just looked at the drawing, then back at me. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "She never leaves the house." Before I could ask another question, the back door of 1B slid open. Michael stood there, a smile fixed on his face, but his eyes were like chips of ice. "Lilybug," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "What are you doing?" He saw the drawing in her hand. He walked over, his movements unnervingly calm, and took the paper from her. His eyes scanned it, and for a split second, I saw a flash of something ugly, something furious in his expression before it was gone. "Looks like it's time to go inside," he said. He took Lily's hand, his grip a little too tight, and led her back to the house. He gave me a quick, forced smile. "Sorry to bother you, Clara." And then they were gone. For the next 2 days, I didn't see Lily at all. The blinds on her bedroom window stayed drawn. I heard her crying once, a muffled, heartbreaking sound that was quickly shushed. Michael was still his normal, friendly self when I saw him, but I couldn't shake the cold feeling of dread that had settled in my stomach. A woman with X's for eyes. She never leaves the house. My curiosity had curdled into fear. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. I started digging online. I searched his name, looking for any information. I found his social media, all pictures of him and Lily, a carefully curated album of single dad perfection. And then I found it, an old news article from a local paper dated 4 years ago. The headline read, "Local Mother Abandons Family." The article was short. It said that Michael's wife, a woman named Anna, had disappeared, leaving behind her husband and 2-year-old daughter. Her car was found at a bus station downtown. The police suspected she had simply left, and the case went cold. There was a picture of her. She had long brown hair and a bright, happy smile. My hands were shaking. She hadn't just left. I knew it. Lily knew it. The woman with X's for eyes. I scrolled through the article again and found a link to Anna's old, abandoned blog. It was mostly posts about gardening and motherhood, but the last post from a week before she disappeared was different. It was titled, "The Music Box." She wrote, "His routines are getting stricter. He calls it our stability, our fortress against the world. But it feels like the walls are closing in. It started with the locks, then the blinds, now the music box. He says it's to settle the house's energy every night. He says it keeps our love pure, keeps it from escaping. He makes me listen to it every night, the same song. He says it's our song, but when it plays, I feel like I'm disappearing." I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't just a routine. It was a prison. And Anna had been his first prisoner. A few days later, Michael knocked on my door. He was holding a bottle of wine, and that devastating smile was back in place. "I feel like I've been a terrible neighbor lately," he said. "Lily's been under the weather. I was wondering if I could make it up to you. Let me cook you dinner on Friday night. A proper thank you for being so welcoming." My entire body screamed nitrogen monoxide. Run, get out. But I looked at his face, at that charming, handsome man, and a sliver of doubt crept in. What if I was wrong? What if I was building a fantasy out of a grieving man's eccentricities and a child's imagination? If I said no, I'd be the crazy, paranoid neighbor. So against every instinct, I heard myself say, I'd love that. Friday night came. I walked over to his side of the duplex, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. The house was immaculate, filled with the smell of roasting chicken. Lily was there, in a pretty dress, but her eyes were full of a silent, desperate warning. Dinner was surreal. Michael was the perfect host. He poured wine, told funny stories, asked me about my life. He talked about how hard it was after Anna left, how he dedicated his life to creating a stable, safe world for Lily. He was so convincing, so earnest, that for a moment, I almost believed him. I'm going to go put Lily to bed, he said after we ate. Make yourself comfortable. I'll be right back. This was my chance. I knew I had to find something, some proof. Making an excuse to use the bathroom, I slipped down the hall to his office. I frantically but quietly started opening drawers. In the bottom drawer of his desk, under a pile of old tax returns, I found a small wooden box. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were Anna's things, a driver's license, a necklace, and a small leather-bound diary. I flipped to the last page. The handwriting was shaky, panicked. He knows I want to leave. He told me tonight that love like ours can't just end. He said he would never let me go. He said he knew a way to make me stay with him, with Lily, forever. He's been digging in the basement. He says he's making a special place for me, a permanent place. The music is starting. He's coming upstairs. Oh God, The entry ended there, in a frantic, smeared line. Suddenly, the floorboards creaked in the hallway. I shoved the diary back in the box and closed the drawer just as Michael appeared in the doorway. He wasn't smiling anymore. Looking for something, Clara? He asked, his voice chillingly calm. I stammered. I just got turned around, looking for the bathroom. He didn't buy it. He walked into the room, slowly closing the door behind him. You know, I had such high hopes for you, he said, his voice full of a cold disappointment. I really thought you were the one. The one for what? I whispered, backing away until my back hit the wall. A new mother for Lily, a new partner for me, he said. Anna, she was a disappointment. She didn't understand true devotion. She wanted to leave. Love doesn't leave, Clara. It stays. So I made her stay. He gestured to the floor. She's still here, in the foundation. Her energy is part of the house now, but she gets restless. That's what the routine is for. The blinds, the locks, the music box. It all keeps her calm. It keeps her here with us, where she belongs. He took a step closer, his eyes dark with a terrifying, obsessive light. I've been watching you for months, even before you moved in. You're strong, you're smart, you're kind. You're the perfect replacement. This dinner, this was your final test, to see if you could fit into our little family. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He glanced at the time. It was 8:59 p.m. It's almost time, he said, a genuine smile returning to his face. But this time, it was monstrous. Time to start the routine. You're going to love it here, Clara. We have forever to get it right. He lunged for me. I screamed, but it was too late. He was strong. The last thing I heard before the world went black was the front door lock clicking into place, followed by the faint, tinny melody of the music box starting its nightly song, right on schedule. My wife, Jessica, and I had a checklist. I think most couples do when they're looking for their forever home. Good school district, check. Low crime rate, check. A decent-sized yard for a dog we hadn't gotten yet, check. Harmony Creek wasn't just a check on all the boxes. It was a bold, cursive signature with a flourish at the end. Driving through the wrought iron gates for the first time felt like entering a different world. The lawns were a shade of green that didn't seem entirely natural. The houses, each one a slight variation of a tasteful beige or cream, were perfectly spaced. There wasn't a single stray leaf on the sidewalks. It was less of a neighborhood and more of a meticulously curated exhibit on suburban perfection. And we just bought a ticket to be part of it. "It's perfect, Mark," Jessica whispered as we pulled into the driveway of our new home. A lovely 2-story colonial that looked like it was pulled from a magazine cover. She was right. It felt safe. It felt clean. It felt like we had finally, truly made it. We hadn't even finished unpacking the first box when he appeared. A man in his late 60s, with a warm, weathered face, a polo shirt tucked neatly into khaki shorts, and a smile that seemed permanently affixed to his face. "Welcome, folks," he boomed, his voice full of an almost aggressive cheerfulness. "Stan Holloway, your neighbor from across the street and the head of the Harmony Creek Neighborhood Watch. We are just so thrilled to have you." He shook our hands with a grip that was surprisingly strong. He was the quintessential friendly neighbor. He told us which day was recycling day, who had the best pizza delivery, and then he handed us the binder. It was a 3-inch white binder with Harmony Creek community guidelines embossed in gold on the front. It was heavy. Stan laughed. "A little light reading for you. It's all the little things that keep this place a paradise, you know." That night, after a day of hauling boxes, Jess and I sat on the floor of our empty living room, eating pizza from a cardboard box, and flipped through the binder. The rules started out reasonable enough. No parking on the street overnight. Lawns must be mowed weekly. Then they got specific. Trash and recycling bins were to be placed at the curb no earlier than 8 p.m. the night before pickup, and must be retrieved by 9 a.m. the morning of. Holiday decorations could not be erected more than 3 weeks prior to the holiday and must be removed within 1 week after. Front doors could only be painted from an approved palette of 6 muted colors. "Wow," Jess said, her voice a little stunned. "They're not kidding around." "Hey," I said, trying to be optimistic. "It's a small price to pay for. All this." I gestured around at our beautiful, silent, perfect new life. "It's what keeps the place a paradise, remember?" For the first month, it was a paradise. Our neighbors were friendly, if a little reserved. They'd wave from their porches. We'd exchange pleasantries at the community mailbox. The quiet was absolute. The safety was palpable. But the rules and Stan's enforcement of them were always there, a low hum beneath the surface of the piece. The first correction came 2 weeks in. I'd worked late and forgotten to bring in the recycling bin. At 9:15 a.m., our doorbell rang. It was Stan, his smile as bright as ever. "Morning, Mark," he said. "Just doing my morning rounds, and noticed your bin was still out. The rules say 9 a.m. sharp. Just a friendly reminder. Don't want the sanitation police to write you a ticket, right?" He winked, but the wink didn't feel friendly. It felt like a warning. I mumbled an apology and quickly wheeled the bin into the garage, my face burning with a strange mix of embarrassment and irritation. A week later, we had some friends over for a barbecue. We were laughing, playing music on a small Bluetooth speaker, maybe a little louder than we should have been. At exactly 10:01 p.m. 1 minute after the community's noise curfew, my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi Mark, Stan here. Sounds like you're having a great time. Just a reminder that quiet hours started at 10. We want to make sure everyone can enjoy a peaceful evening. Thanks." The smiley face at the end felt like a punch in the gut. Our friends left soon after, the mood sufficiently killed. Your neighborhood watch is intense, my friend Kevin noted as he left. It's like living with your parents. He was right. We were constantly being watched, judged. The perfection of Harmony Creek wasn't a byproduct of good neighbors. It was a state of being, enforced by a relentless, cheerful surveillance. It was during one of Stan's impromptu chats about the acceptable height of our hedges that I first met Carlos Garcia. He lived 2 houses down and was outside washing his car. He was in his 40s, with a laid-back vibe that felt completely alien in Harmony Creek. He caught my eye and gave me a sympathetic, knowing roll of his eyes. Later that week, I saw him at the community pool. "Stan get you with the hedge trimmer speech yet?" he asked with a wry grin. "You have no idea," I laughed, relieved to find someone who saw the absurdity of it all. "This place is a lot." "Tell me about it," Carlos said, lowering his voice. "My wife, Elena, she loved the idea of this place. The safety, the quiet. But it's a golden cage, man. You can't breathe without breaking a rule. We got an email last week because our daughter's sidewalk chalk art was not in keeping with the community's aesthetic standards." He shook his head. "We're thinking of moving. This isn't living. It's performing." I felt a kinship with Carlos. He was the only other person who seemed to see the cracks in the harmony. A few weeks later, he decided to perform his own small act of rebellion. He and Elena painted their front door. It wasn't a crazy color. It was a rich, beautiful shade of crimson red. But in the sea of beige, cream, and muted gray doors, it might as well have been a signal fire. It was beautiful, and it was a violation of Section 8, Paragraph 4 of the binder. The reaction was immediate and silent. No one said a word, but the neighborhood's disapproval was a palpable thing. People on their morning walks would slow down, stare at the door, and then hurry on. Stan didn't come by with a friendly reminder. There were no texts. There was just a cold, heavy silence. A week after the door was painted, the Garcias were gone. Jess was the one who noticed. "Mark," she said, her voice tense as she looked out the kitchen window. "There's a moving truck at the Garcias. It's 2 a.m. We watched from our bedroom window as a generic, unbranded moving truck was loaded in near total silence. There were no shouted instructions, no sounds of furniture banging. Just 3 men moving with a chilling, silent efficiency. By sunrise, the truck was gone. The house was empty. The crimson-red door seemed to mock the stillness. The next day, Stan was out on his lawn, cheerfully watering his petunias. I walked over, my heart pounding. "Hey, Stan," I said, trying to sound casual. "Saw the moving truck last night. Everything okay with the Garcias?" Stan looked up, his smile never wavering. "Oh, the Garcias. Yes, a terrible shame. A sudden family emergency back in California. They had to leave immediately. It was all very sudden. We'll miss them, of course." It was a lie. A smooth, well-rehearsed, obvious lie. You don't pack up your entire life in the middle of the night for a family emergency. And you don't do it in complete silence. That's when my fear truly began. What happened to them? Where did they go? I started looking, digging into the history of Harmony Creek online. One found a few old, defunct real estate forums. Most posts were glowing reviews. But then I found a thread, buried deep, from 6 years ago. It was started by someone claiming to be a former resident. The post read, "Do not move to Harmony Creek. It's a cult. They watch you. They control you. If you don't fit in, they make you disappear." We got out, but we lost everything. They threatened us. If we talked, they said they'd find us. They're not just a neighborhood watch. They're something else. The replies were a mix of mockery and other, similar, paranoid-sounding stories. People who were forced out, people whose pets had run away after they'd lodged a complaint. It sounded insane, but looking at the perfect silent houses around me, it felt terrifyingly real. I had to know. I had to find proof. I knew Stan was the heart of it all. I waited for a night. I knew he and his wife were at the community's weekly bridge game. Fueled by a terror-induced bravery, I slipped out of my house and crept across the street, letting myself into his backyard. My target was the garage. The side door was unlocked. My heart hammered against my ribs as I slipped inside, pulling the door quietly shut behind me. The garage was neat, organized. A workbench, garden tools, shelves. But against the back wall, covered by a heavy tarp, was something else. I pulled the tarp away, and my blood ran cold. It wasn't a workbench. It was a command center. A bank of monitors showed live video feeds from dozens of cameras. I saw the community gate, the pool, the clubhouse, and then I saw the other feeds. I saw the interior of the house next door to me. I saw a family eating dinner in another house. And then I saw it. Monitor 14B my house. I was looking at a live feed of my own empty living room. My mind reeled. How? Where? And then my eyes landed on a shelf. On it was a row of identical wicker baskets, filled with decorative straw, identical to the welcome basket Stan had given us the day we moved in. There, woven subtly into the wicker near the handle, was a tiny black pinhole camera lens. They had been watching us from the very first moment, judging us. A floorboard creaked behind me. Looking for something, Mark? I spun around. It was Stan. He wasn't alone. 2 other men from the neighborhood, both on the watch, were with him. Stan wasn't smiling anymore. His face was cold, calm, and utterly devoid of the cheerfulness he always wore like a mask. I knew you were a curious one, Stan said, taking a step into the garage. You have the same look Carlos did. The look of someone who can't just accept paradise, who has to poke and prod at it. What did you do to them? I demanded, my voice shaking. The Garcias. What did you do? Stan sighed, a sound of genuine disappointment. We gave them a choice. The same choice everyone gets when they prove they can't live in harmony. They can leave, walk away with their lives, but with nothing else. No money, no possessions. Just disappear. Or they can be removed from the community. Tidied up. The Garcias, thankfully, made the sensible choice. This is insane, I breathed, backing away towards the monitors. You're a cult. We are a community, Stan corrected me, his voice dangerously soft. We are a project, an experiment to prove that with the right rules, the right oversight, you can create a perfect society. No crime, no conflict, no ugly red doors. But for the experiment to work, you have to eliminate the variables. The dissenters, the ones who bring their ugliness and their chaos from the outside world. He gestured to the monitors. We vet everyone. We watch everyone. We give everyone a chance to assimilate. But you, Mark, you and Jessica, you ask too many questions. And now you've seen this. You've contaminated the experiment. He stepped aside, and the 2 other men moved forward. They weren't holding weapons. They didn't need to. Their eyes were empty, devoid of anything but a calm, collective purpose. You have a choice to make now. You and your wife, Stan said, his voice as flat and final as a judge's gavel. The community board is meeting tomorrow night to discuss your residency. We'll be voting on your future in Harmony Creek. You can be gone by then. Disappear like the Garcias. Or you can stay for the vote. I sincerely hope you make the right choice. He smiled then, a thin, cold sliver of a smile. We'd hate to have to tidy up again. It puts a dent in the landscaping budget. He and his men turned and left, leaving me standing in their garage, bathed in the cold, blue light of the monitors. one of which was still broadcasting my empty living room. My prison. They didn't lock me in. They didn't need to. I walked back to my perfect house on the perfect street and looked at Jessica. I didn't have to say a word. She saw it on my face. We're trapped. We're being watched from a camera, hidden in a welcome basket sitting in her hall. We have until tomorrow night. We can run, leaving everything we've ever worked for, and hope they don't follow. Or we can stay and face their vote and be tidied up. Out the window, I can see our neighbors. They're watering their lawns, waving to each other with placid smiles, the picture of harmony. But their eyes, they keep flicking towards our house. They're all watching. They're all waiting. Divorce is a funny thing. It doesn't just split your assets and your holidays. It hollows you out. It leaves you with this echoing silence in places where there used to be noise. After mine was finalized, the silence of my city apartment was deafening. Every car horn, every siren, every laugh from the street just reminded me of how quiet my own life had become. I needed to get away, not just from the city, but from the ghost of the life I thought I was going to have. That's when I found the Blackwood Estate. It was a listing that had to be a typo. 100 acres of dense woodland and a historic stone-built house, all for a price that wouldn't even get you a down payment on a studio apartment in the city. It belonged to a great uncle I'd met maybe twice in my life, a reclusive old man named Alistair. He had passed away with no direct heirs, and the bank was liquidating the property in a hurry. It's remote. The real estate agent had told me over the phone, her voice laced with a warning I didn't appreciate at the time. And the sale is as is. Very, very as is. That was fine by me. Remote was what I wanted. As is was what I felt. I bought it sight unseen. The drive up to the house was the first sign that remote was an understatement. The last 10 miles were on a winding, unpaved road, swallowed on both sides by a thick, ancient forest that the sunlight struggled to pierce. The house itself wasn't visible from the road. Only a rusted iron gate and a small, faded sign that read Blackwood. The house was imposing, built from dark, local stone. It looked less like a home and more like a small fortress that had lost a long war with nature. Ivy crawled up the walls, and the windows were like dark, vacant eyes. But it was solid, quiet, and mine. As I stood there, taking in the sheer, overwhelming silence, I felt a sense of peace for the first time in months. It was then I realized I wasn't alone. An old man was standing near a small, well-kept cottage 100 yards from the main house. He was tall and gaunt, with skin like tanned leather and a thick mane of silver hair. He was holding a pair of pruning shears, watching me. He walked over, his steps slow and deliberate. "You must be Alex," he said. His voice was a low, gravelly rumble, like stones rolling downhill. "I'm Silas, the groundskeeper." I reached out to shake his hand. His grip was like a bundle of knotted rope, surprisingly strong. "Nice to meet you, Silas. The agent mentioned you." "I imagine she did," he said, his eyes scanning my face. "I come with the house, life tenant in the cottage. Been here 50 years. I was your uncle's keeper." "His keeper?" I asked. "Of the grounds," he clarified, though the correction felt slow, deliberate. "I know this land, every tree, every stone. If you need anything, you ask me." In the first few weeks, Silas was a godsend. He knew the house's secrets, which well pump needed a kick to get started, which floorboards would betray my steps in the night. He was a man of few words, but there was a deep, quiet wisdom about him. We fell into a comfortable routine. I'd work on the house, he'd work on the land, and we'd sometimes share a cup of coffee on the porch in the evenings, sitting in a silence that felt companionable, not empty. My only real companion was Bucky, my golden retriever. He was my one constant through the divorce, my furry four-legged shadow. He loved the woods, the endless space to run. But there was one part of the property he hated. About a half-mile behind the main house, deep in a grove of dark pine trees, where the air was always cold, was a shed. It was a squat, ugly building, made of the same dark stone as the house, but it had no windows. Its door was made of thick, heavy oak, bound with iron straps and secured with a massive, ancient-looking padlock that was rusted a deep, angry orange. The first time Bucky and I approached it on a walk, he stopped dead in his tracks. The fur on his back stood up, and a low, guttural growl rumbled in his chest. He whined, looking at me, then at the shed, and refused to go a single step closer. "What is it, boy?" I asked, but he just tugged me back towards the house. I asked Silas about it the next day. We were walking the property line, and I pointed towards the dark shape of the shed in the distance. "What's in that old shed, Silas? It looks like a bunker." Silas stopped walking. The calm, rustic demeanor he usually wore vanished, replaced by a stony seriousness. "That shed is not to be touched," he said, his voice flat. "Your Uncle Alistair had his reasons. He made it off limits. I've always respected his wishes." "What kind of reasons?" I pressed. "Is there old equipment in there?" He turned to look at me, and his eyes were dark with a gravity that startled me. "Some doors are locked for a good reason, son. This is the land of my ancestors as much as it was your family's. Trust me when I tell you, you are better off leaving that one closed." I let it go. It was an old man's superstition, an eccentric uncle's strange request. But the place stuck in my mind. The woods around it seemed darker, the air colder. And at night, I started hearing things. I'd be in bed and hear a noise from deep in the woods, in the direction of the shed. It was a heavy, dragging sound, sometimes followed by a low, guttural moan that the wind carried up to the house. I told myself it was a bear or a deer, but it didn't sound like any animal I'd ever heard. My curiosity became a low-grade obsession. I knew the key had to be somewhere. I spent a whole afternoon searching my uncle's dusty, book-filled office. In the back of his desk drawer, I found a large, ornate iron key and a small, leather-bound journal. The key was old, but it looked like it would fit the padlock on the shed. My heart hammered. The journal was mostly filled with notes on the estate's finances, but the last entry, dated the day before he died, was different. The handwriting was shaky. "It's getting stronger, or I'm getting weaker. I made a mistake during the feeding tonight. It almost got the better of me. Silas is right. The line is thinning. I don't know how much longer I can be its keeper." Keeper, the same word Silas had used. A mistake during the feeding? What the hell was my uncle doing out there? Before I could process it, I heard Bucky barking frantically in the backyard. I put the journal down and ran outside. The back door was ajar, which I'd left open for him. But he wasn't in the yard. I called his name. Nothing. I whistled. Silence. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. I grabbed a flashlight and ran into the woods, screaming his name. For over an hour, I searched, my voice growing hoarse, my mind replaying every terrible possibility. I circled back, my search area growing wider, until I found myself in the cold, dark grove of pines near the shed. And that's when my flashlight beam landed on it. Lying in the dirt, just a few feet from that heavy oak door, was Bucky's collar. It was ripped, as if torn off with incredible force. One side was dark and wet with something I knew was blood. A wave of white-hot rage washed over my grief. Whatever was in that shed had taken my dog. The warnings, the superstitions, they meant nothing to me now. I ran back to the main house, grabbed a pair of heavy-duty bolt cutters from the garage, and marched back to the shed, the iron key from the desk heavy in my pocket. I didn't even try the key. I wanted the satisfaction of destruction. The old, rusted padlock was thick, but with a surge of adrenaline, I snapped it. The sound echoed in the dead quiet of the woods. I pulled the heavy iron bolt from the door and pulled. It was incredibly heavy, but it scraped open with a deep, groaning sound. The air that hit me was foul. A thick, coppery smell of old blood, mixed with the stench of rot and bleach. I held my breath and shined my flashlight inside. The shed was barren. Packed earth floor, stone walls. Heavy, iron chains were bolted to the far wall, ending in thick, formidable manacles. And in the center of the floor was a large iron grate, sealing a dark pit below. In the corner, I saw a shovel and a disturbed patch of earth. Something was sticking out. I knelt down and pulled at it. It was a rotted leather satchel. Inside, protected by oilcloth, was another journal. My uncle's. This one was older, the entries spanning years. I flipped to the end, my hands shaking. He killed the dog. The new neighbor's dog that wandered too close. Silas is helping me dispose of the remains. It's getting harder to cover the tracks. It's getting harder to control him. My blood turned to ice. He? Who was he? I kept reading, my light darting across the page as the horrific truth unspooled. The thing in the shed wasn't an animal. It was my other great-uncle, Alistair's younger brother, Corbin. Born, as the journal described, with a sickness in his mind and a cruelty in his soul. A monstrous child who grew into a monstrous man. After a violent incident the family had covered up decades ago, they couldn't bring themselves to kill him, so they did the next best thing. They built this shed, this prison, and locked him away from the world. My family hadn't just owned this land. They had been wardens of their own private asylum. And Silas wasn't just a groundskeeper. He was the jailer, the keeper. My uncle Alistair had inherited the burden from his father. And now, the journal entry from the day Alistair died described it all. He was too quick for me today. My arm, my leg, I'm bleeding out. Silas will find me in the morning. He will clean up. He will wait for the next of the bloodline to come. The house cannot be without a keeper. The burden must be passed. I stumbled backward, dropping the journal, my mind screaming. The low price, the as-is sale, Silas's warnings. It wasn't a real estate transaction. It was the passing of a curse. I hadn't inherited a house. I had inherited a monster. That's when I heard it. A deep, heavy thump from behind me. I spun around. The heavy oak door was swinging shut. I lunged for it, but it was too late. It slammed closed with a sound of utter finality, plunging me into absolute suffocating darkness. I heard the iron bolt slide home. Then, the distinct, metallic rattle of a new, heavy chain being looped through the handles. I was locked in. "Silas!" I screamed, pounding on the door. Silas let me out. His voice came from the other side, low and full of a weary sorrow. "I'm sorry, Alex. I truly am. I tried to warn you away. I hoped you'd be the one to just live in the house and leave the woods to me. What are you doing?" I shrieked, my voice cracking with terror. "You broke the lock. You entered the house of the afflicted. You read the books," he recited, his voice like a priest performing a somber rite. "You have accepted the inheritance. The knowledge is the key, son. Once you know, you are bound to it. I don't accept anything. Let me out of here." "The keeper cannot leave his post," Silas said, his voice grim. "And the house can never be without a keeper. Your uncle is gone. My watch is ending. The burden is now yours." I stopped pounding, a horror colder and deeper than anything I'd ever known washing over me. The burden is now yours. I was the new keeper. This shed wasn't just a prison for the monster. It was a prison for its jailer, too. And as that terrible realization settled into my bones, I heard a new sound. A slow, scraping noise from right beneath my feet. The sound of something heavy dragging itself up from the pit. A low, guttural, and distinctly human moan echoed in the small stone space. It was the same sound I had heard on the wind at night, but now it was here, with me, in the dark, and it sounded hungry. And that's all for tonight. Remember, the most terrifying monsters are the ones that look just like us, the ones who might even live right next door. If these stories serve as a good reminder to trust your instincts, then show your support and like and subscribe. Hitting that bell means you'll get a warning before the next nightmare begins. Sleep well, if you can.